Welcome, Sports Cars fans. Ray from Philly here, and welcome to another episode of Sports Car Talk. This is episode 21, and this is part 2 of a series that we have been doing for the 70 years of Topps. This is the 70th anniversary of the historical baseball car company Topps. We did part 1 based on the decades. We're doing 1950s. We did on part 1. Today, part 2, we're covering the decade of the fantastic 1960s. And I'm first joined by my co-host, which you all know as Mike, This Baseball Card Life. Mike, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing great.
Thanks for joining. I'm looking forward to this because not only is Mike with us as usual, we have a very, very special guest with us tonight. This is a longtime member of the sports card hobby community, former employee of Beckett, currently with COMC. We have joining us tonight, Mr. Rich Klein. Rich, thanks for joining us tonight. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm honored to be with the people who run the Baseball Card Hall of Fame. I know a couple of people from the National have tried to do things like that, and the two of you have succeeded. And I think you would think that maybe after 1 or 2 years it's done, but I saw plenty of cool nominations this year when I saw the list. And I mean, it can go for quite a while. It's very exciting to see lists like that. Like, wait a second, we can go for 20, 30 years and not even be done.
Easily. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And we hope for many, many more years of doing this. Mike and I and Victor, who's also on our committee, we had a blast this year. So looking forward to bigger, better things in the future. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun for us as well. Well, tonight's, the goal of the show always is to learn something and hopefully add a few cards or sets to your baseball card want list. But first, Rich, why don't you give us a little history, a background of yourself in the hobby?
Well, I'm a lifer. And I got really active in the hobby in the mid and late 70s. Excuse me. And I remember about 76, 77, I started subscribing to the Trader Speaks and Sports Collectors Digest. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I still remember my first Sports Collectors Digest was April 15th, 1977. And my first Trader Speaks is January 1977. And I accumulated a lot of cards, so I learned a lot that way. Right. And on one level, you probably should have bought the most expensive cards. But on another level, buying all the things I did prepped me for basically half my life and more than half of my professional career by getting such a depth of information about all these cards. I can look at things and say, oh, I remember this. Yeah. And I mean, there's stuff in the new cards that I just shake my head sometimes. I think somebody mentioned Dr. Beckett had a content creator dinner on Saturday night, and somebody mentioned that there's 100 parallels, I think, in 2021 Score Select Football, and I just shake my head. That truly is an SMH thing. And the unintentional things done in the 50s, 60s, and even into the 70s make the collecting of those cards more fun than, today's deliberate things. So right. I enjoy learning things on the old cards. I'm still learning things on the old cards. And some I should know, but today I was doing some ID work for COMC. And, I take great pride in finding things. And I think it was Aaron Robinson had a 49 Bowman card. He's wearing a White Sox cap because he played with the White Sox in 48. He gets traded to the Detroit Tigers, I believe, for 49. So we list them with both teams because a White Sox collector might want that card and a Tigers collector might want that card. And that type of unintentional thing, and it does pop into many of the 60s cards as well, is the type of stuff I really enjoy. But that's all unintentional. It's not like today. So there's a joy to those cards.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes the unintentional is the best way and the most fun. You had mentioned Dr. Beckett. Do you want to give us a chance to tell us what are some of the podcasts or shows that you do?
Yes, I am a semi-regular. I call myself the Bob Euchre. He calls me the Ed McMahon and of course we're both dating how old we are when we do that reference, of his podcast. We do about 4 or 5 episodes a month, and it's a blast. And people like hearing. And we were mentioning in the pre-show that we do it sort of like I reference an Odd Couple episode from the TV show of the 70s, and in the script it says Oscar teaches Felix football, and the two of them made it up as they went along. That whole 5-minute scene where Oscar tries to teach Felix football. I get a list of things to talk about, and we bat it about. We don't prep anything in the script. I just let it settle in my mind, and we really enjoy that. Yeah. And I'm also a regular guest host on Hobby Hotline. In fact, I'll be on Labor Day Saturday weekend will be my next time.
Okay. And
we have a good time, and we talk about current topics. And although I tease, I actually do pay attention to what's going on in today's world. And as noted, I've been at COMC for more than 4.5 years now, and I'm very blessed in that not a lot of people get we'll call the not second chance, and that's not really the right term, but a second life in terms of, going back to what they love. And I got very blessed that I got a second turn doing hobby, basically database and knowledge work. And that's been a blessing for 4.5 years.
Yeah. I can understand that. Definitely.
Well, Rich, you may see behind me some bookshelves here, and there's a lot of old Beckett books. And you may remember this one, Baseball Card Price Guides.
I do. I had them all at one point.
Okay. Well, this is the earliest one that I found your name in. This one's from 1983.
What number is that, Mike? 5?
So that's the 80. Yeah, and Dr. Jim would send out surveys, and I wrote long responses. And we probably had met before that, but I tell the story, and it's not apocryphal, but it's kind of humorous, how we officially met on a softball field in Parsippany, New Jersey in 1984. And he was the catcher for both, not the pitcher, but the catcher for both teams. So he could meet everybody coming to the plate.
Wow.
Yeah. Which was a brilliant move if you think about it.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself. I know. I'm glad I read everything you send me. You're very good in what you send me. And one of the funniest stories, it took about 6.5 years, give or take, after I met him at the official thing. It's actually 6 years before I got hired at Beckett full time. And it was about 6.5 years, or actually, 6 and 4 months, because I didn't realize it, but I met Tim at the Baltimore National in 2010, because I would still be looking for a job, even though at the time I was at Bank of America. And 6 years later, I got hired at COMC. So, the old Harry Chapin song, All My Life's a Circle. Yeah. Well, in that case, all my hobby life really is a circle.
That's cool. That's great.
That's awesome. All right. So how about we get into the 60s tops and just get going through here. And Rich, you can just a lot of the reason you're on is because you know more about this decade than both Ray and I. So you can just feel free to comment while we go through these slides. It's a lot of Topps images, and we'll just get going. So let's click here. So here's one of the old Topps logos that I used.
And if you've noticed, Topps brings back that logo in their what they call their flagship sets.
Okay.
And it's really nice to see that they bring back that logo. And they've short printed to 99 some of those cards nowadays, but you still get to see the logo. About 10, 11 years ago, I think it was Target used that old logo, but it was still good to see that they honor their history that way.
Right.
Yep. And modern Topps cards, so if you collect heritage, modern stuff, so you'll see a lot of the designs here. So, All right, so Topps. 1960. So Major League Baseball, 1960, there's 16 teams. And by the end of the decade, there's 24 teams. So more teams equals more players. So this gave Topps the option to, increase the set size because there's more players to take pictures of. So they did that. It started at 572 and goes all the way to 664.
What I find interesting in that slide is 67 goes to 609. But other than that, they never really go over 600 until 69.
Mm-hmm.
They're always 572, 598,
Right.
576, 587, 598, 598, 598. But they really, in 69, when they add those 4 more teams, make the push to 664.
Right.
Yep. So we are kind of continuing from where we left off in 59. So here's the 59 design right into 60. So I thought I'd use some of Stan Musial's cards because he honestly doesn't have a lot of Topps cards. So here's a bigger image of that card, and there's different color variations on the bottom. So you'll see like green and pink and a few others. How many different colors do you remember?
The 371 to 440 series, I believe it is, that actually has white and gray backs, just like the 59, 199 to 286 series have white and gray backs. And as far as I know, there's no price differential. But if you want a master set, it's kind of cool to be able to add to your master set without really killing your budget. And there aren't a lot of superstars in that series either. So you're really not going to destroy your budget to get a Master 60 set.
Yeah. So that's the front and the back of all the cards. I love the cartoons on the back. They're just awesome.
Is that the first year they started with the cartoons?
Many of the leading artists of the time to do those cartoons on the back. They're not just thrown together. They used the people who did things for like Mad Magazine and all those people were the cartoonists. So they actually had very talented cartoonists doing that. And it was obviously popular with the kids because they kept doing that for many years. So just remember, in the 60s, this was all done for the kids. It wasn't done for the adults. And one thing about 60 is I am convinced there are probably more 1960 cards than any other set from about 57 through about 67 or 68. There's tons of 60s cards out there. And if you think about it, that makes sense because that was, the kids that are like 7, 8 to 12, 13, the prime years for buying cards. Well, that's the generation of the baby, of the baby boomers. And Topps just said, we've got a big audience. Let's just print cards. And I had, when I was collecting, no issue at all ever getting 1960s cards, especially the first couple series. But the high numbers are a little tougher, but never really had any issues.
Yep. All right, so now we'll get into some subsets here. So there's this Sports Magazine Rookie Prospect cards. There's 32 of them in the set, and this is one of the popular cards. And Ray has this card. Isn't this on like a future Hall of Fame list of yours?
It is.
Maybe?
Yeah, it's on the future Hall of Fame set registry for Jim Cott. Yeah. And
Ray, isn't he a former Philly too?
Yeah, I always saw him pitch. He pitched for us for 2 years, 77 and I think in 78. And he was one of the quickest pitchers. I don't mean its velocity. I mean, if you went to go see a game where Jim Cott pitched, it was less than 2 hours. The game was over.
We can use that nowadays. I can't think of a Texas Ranger game I've ever been to in my life that took less than 3 hours.
Yeah. We need Greg Maddux, who, does it in 90 pitches or something.
As soon as Jim Cott got the ball, it went right back to the catcher.
Awesome. All right, next we have these manager cards. There's 16 of those, and here's Casey Stengel here. He looks really old. Doesn't he look like he's 90? But he's definitely not. But he just looks... People in this decade, by the way, that are in their 60s, they look a lot older. I don't know if it's from cigarettes or who knows.
They grew up with harder lives, and that's fairly obvious. They're not the rich suburban kids playing baseball. They're the hard scrabble kids from the farm from poor areas, and that's why they all look older. Most of them were not rich kids. It was very unusual to have a richer person playing baseball in that era.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Next, we have these Topps all rookie teams. There's 10 of these, and this is Pumpsy Green. I like this one in the trophy. So
It's the first year of the tops of those Topps trophy cards, and those cards are very popular.
Yeah.
There are a subset of collectors who collect these cards, and
that's true.
There's been a lot of great players over the years that have it. In fact, in about 2005, Topps made what they called a Rookie Cup series, honoring people who had, one of the things was honoring the people who had trophy cards.
Right.
All right. Next is the World Series cards. There's 7 of those, and I just picked this one because I love it with all the beer or wine or whatever is going over his head. So obviously the Dodgers won the 1959 World Series.
My favorite card in the subset is the one Luis, which is Luis Aparicio, swipes second.
Yeah.
Okay. The player who's covering second base is Maury Wills, which it's 7 years before his official rookie.
Right.
Oh, I didn't know
we
that.
We have listed that card as a Maury Wills card because he's very obviously on that card.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. But yeah, you're right, because he didn't have a Topps card. He had a 63 Fleer, but yeah,
he's got post zero, but he's got no Topps card.
Right.
But it's listed as a Maury Wills card because he's on it. So when Topps Archives did like reprints of rookie cards in 2001, Maury Wills, the rookie card they feature of him is not the 67, it's the 60 card.
Wow.
He obviously has forgiven Topps for whatever it was back in those days. But that's just a really cool card of Maury Wills 7 years before he got a regular Topps card. And it took a while because he's a tough high number in 67.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they didn't get him in early in the set. They had waited.
Right.
So, all right, next we're going to coaches. So these floating heads, kind of look like the Rose and a Stargell card in 63 that we'll get to later.
Well, one thing about these cards is, believe it or not, there's a coach that's still living. Eddie Robinson, over 100 years old, still active, doing podcasts, is one of the coaches, I believe, for the Baltimore Orioles on these cards.
Wow, that's awesome. I actually sent him a card. I TGM'd him and got a 51 Bowman card of his autographed, and it says "To Mike" from Eddie Robinson. So
when I was running shows pre-COVID, I had Eddie at one of my shows. He's like 95 at the time. And my good friend Paul Rogers, who's was an SMU law dean and still involved in SMU athletics. He comes up with him to sit with him at the show, which is great because then I don't have to worry about who's sitting with the player. Yeah. And Paul can handle all that. Eddie, mind you, Eddie is 95 years old, and these are paperbacks. He carries in the box of 24 books. And he's 95 years old. It's not a heavy box, but he's 95 years old carrying a box of books.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he's sharp as a tack still.
That's amazing. So, I mean, he met Babe Ruth. He's the one that handed him Bob Feller's bat when he went out, and that famous Babe Ruth photo where he's leaning on that bat. Yeah. So anyhow, we'll keep moving here. So we have these Sports Magazine All-Star selections. So there's 20 cards of these. They're the last 20 cards in the set, I believe. So
correct.
This is obviously Hank Aaron, who was 20-time All-Star or something like that. So that's an awesome set. Then we have these team card photos, and there's 16 of those that I counted because there's 16 teams in the league. And we'll keep moving here. So these like dual photo cards. I like this one with Mantle. There's 11 of those. And then I finished the slides from this 60 set with the rookie cards. And I just love both of these classic cards.
Yeah. Now
these are rare because they're rare horizontal cards, and yet they look perfectly attractive. And I love that. Mm-hmm. It was the only time Topps went horizontal with the preponderance of their set for a long time. And yet these rookie cards, as you see, look perfectly fine being horizontal, not vertical.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they're hard to find without like black marks on them too.
The Yastrzemski is known for having those little black specks in the corner.
All over it. So
I do want to point out when it comes to 1960 that when Alan Rosen made the Paris, Tennessee find of 54s and 55s, there was also 60s and 61s. Okay. I opened some of the 1960s pack. It is my birth year. I was in my 20s at the time. Mm-hmm. And this is one of these times where I wish I could have invoked the rule of you get to keep what you open in the pack. because the second pack I opened had Mantle in it.
Oh.
So I can proudly say, I started collecting in 68, 69, so I got Mantles that way, but I can proudly say I opened a 60 Topps pack from my birth year with a Mantle.
Wow.
That's incredible. Do you know where the Mantle is now?
It's probably sold and in somebody's collection and somewhere in New Jersey, or it's probably slab somewhere. I gave it to John Brogy. I was doing part-time work for him at the time. He runs the National and he probably sold it, so it's sitting in some collection somewhere.
Yeah, I wish it was mine. Well, I
wish
wish it was
were mine in that condition.
Yeah, it was probably like a 7 or 8 right out of the pack.
Right out of the pack. Yeah,
absolutely. So, all right, let's move on to 61. So Stan, there was 572 in 1960, and the set is 587 and 61. So you can see the design change from horizontal to vertical. And let's take a closer look.
It's also interesting, despite adding 2 teams, they only added 15 total cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And isn't 61 mostly all portrait shots too?
Yeah, and it is mostly portrait shots because of all the the 2 teams, and they were a little afraid. So you almost had to be really established with your team, like Musial was, to have a cap which really shows which team you're with.
Okay.
Yeah. And here's the back, and I just love that it shows 3,294 hits on the back of a baseball card and 429 home runs. I mean, he wasn't retired then, but it's just awesome to see that. All right, next we're just going to these checklists, and I believe this is the first set to include checklists.
It's actually the third set. They're checklists in 56 and 57 as checklists. I believe they are not really considered part of the set. This is the first year they're really part of the set.
Okay.
And
so in the 50s, they weren't numbered, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And 58 to 60 have checklists, but they're like on the back of team cards. So Topps was always fiddling around with how to do checklists. And finally, they just bit the bullet and just created separate checklist cards. And what's neat about these is this is, I believe, the only year of the 60s where they actually have action photos on the checklists.
Yeah. So here's the team cards. It doesn't have the checklist on the back. And like you said, in 61, it has more stats on the 1960 season. And it shows I put the Minnesota Twins here because they used to be the Washington Senators. That's why I added that into the slide.
And that, by the way, is a tough high number card. You don't see those a lot in the secondary market.
Yeah.
And 61 high numbers have always been one of the 3 toughest high numbers to complete in the 60s, with 66 and 67.
Yeah.
They're just tough.
Yes, especially 67.
Yep. So in 1961, Major League Baseball added 2 teams, the Los Angeles Angels and the Minnesota Twins. So there were
actually they had the Washington Senators because
the Senators too. Okay.
The Twins moved from Washington.
Right.
Okay, so they added Washington Senators. Okay, so there's 2 extra teams in the American League in 1961. So there's that. And another subset is these league leaders. And I just pulled up the Mantle card here for the 60 home runs and Roger Maris. So that's really neat. Let me see how many.
And again, I believe there were 10, and I believe this is the first year Topps did leaders cards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And here's some manager cards. Let's see if I can find my notes. Of Walt Austin, who was on manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers too when they won in 55, and was manager till all the way till Tony La Russa took over in the 70s, I believe.
Tommy Lasorda, yeah.
Tommy Lasorda, I'm sorry. Yep, Tommy
That's okay.
Lasorda.
And think about it, the Dodgers had for 40 plus years, the Dodgers only had 2 managers.
Yeah.
Yep.
You don't see that today.
Yep. So I wanted to include one of the World Series cards, and I had to include this one because, the greatest home run pretty much ever, right, in the history of baseball. So
as a Yankee fan, I cringe, but it is one of the most famous home runs ever.
Yep.
Is this the first year of World Series that they did?
No, remember we showed the World Series.
Yeah, that's right.
And we talked
Dodgers.
about the previous year because they had a Maury Wills on it. There were some good players on the sixth. I believe there's a 61 Mantle World Series card too, where he hits 2 homers or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And now we're into the MVP cards. So there's 16 of those. There's 8 in the American League, and that are the red ones, and 8 in the National League that have these blue backgrounds. I thought I'd pick, 2 iconic baseball stars and Mantle and Mays. And then there's Sporting News All-Stars cards. And picked the Al Kaline, just like that photo, and Willie Mays there smiling.
One of these weird quirks is, I believe, Pancho Herrera has a 61.
Yeah.
He does not have a regular card in 61, but he does have a high number All-Star card. It's one of these weird quirks. I see you smiling when we talk about
Pancho. It's a Philly. I mean, we talk about that card all the time. That's a tough card to find. Very tough card to find.
Pancho, for his 4 years in the in cards, also has that really impossible 58 card where like the A is like not printed correctly, and if you get a card that's not tampered with that has that you've just done very well.
Okay, yeah.
So Pancho has some interesting things in his 4 years, and I think I think his 60 card calls him Frank. He has some, as I said, for a short period of creating card, he's got interesting cards.
He definitely does.
All right, so I thought I would include a couple of errors here and variations that I found. So this Tiny's Topps error and variations is Jack Fisher. So like the numbers are all messed up with like a Warren Spahn All-Star card. Let's see. There are 2 cards numbered 463.
And 61 high numbers. So the set goes to 589, but there's only 587. They just didn't print 2 of the numbers for whatever reason.
Yeah. So there's that. Yeah, because on the back it's 463 for both of these. The team card and Jack Fisher have the same number. So,
by the way, this presages if you collect modern cards, Topps in the 90s, 2000s to this day sometimes still has trouble getting their numbering straight on cards. So, everything new is old again, or everything old is new again.
Right.
Well, this is Topps missing numbering, and not the first time, and definitely not the last time.
Yeah. Yep, and there's a checklist error, and then there's different variations. We're not going to get too deep into this, but you see the black 98 and the white 98 and the different yellow and red colored old for checklists. So there's all kinds of, different variations of cards I've learned about in the 60s. But yeah, this is just one example off a checklist. And then we're going to end with 3 rookie card Hall of Famers here: Ron Santo, Juan Marisha, and Billy Williams.
Love the Marisha rookie.
The Marisha rookie is a short print within the 5th series, too. It's a tough card.
Yeah. And it's known for having some sort of green speck.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is we knew the Marisha was short printed, and I've written about this. And at a show in 1993, I saw a 61 5th series sheet. Well, all the cards we suspected were short printed, sure enough, were short printed on the sheet. Every once in a while, it's nice to get proof of what you think you know in the hobby, because it's a short printed card. But one of the most famous short printed cards from that series is the Bill Muscower. That was like the first really well-known short printed card from that set. Right. And then the rest have just followed. But the Marisha is a tough card. And as you said, it's not just tough, but it's tough in condition.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now we're going to get into 1962, and those are in, here we go, from 587 total cards to just, 9 or 10 or 11 more cards, and 598 there in 1962.
And again, 2 teams are added. So again, they didn't really explode adding 2 teams. You added 50 players to the major leagues, and they only added 11 total cards.
Right.
And so in 2 years with 100+ players that they could have added to the sets, they only added 26 cards. So that's an interesting, they didn't put everybody in a card they could have in those days.
Right.
Yeah, and those two teams were the Houston Colt 45s and the New York Mets.
And the Mets, right.
Yep.
And I don't know about the Houston Colt 45s, but most of the Mets are not printed in Mets uniform. It takes to the last two series before you actually get Mets cards wearing Mets uniforms.
Yeah.
One of whom is Don Zimmer, whose card shows him in Mets uniform, but because he had an 0 for 35 streak, they shuffled him off to Cincinnati. So the card actually lists him as a Cincinnati Red, but he's wearing a Mets uniform.
Awesome. Yeah. So here's the 62 design, and this is a closer look, and it has that wood grain there that, you know, if you're an 80s cards fan, they kind of copied that in 1987 Topps. So that's the front of the card, and the back still has the cartoons there that are awesome. Big moment for Stan. So 3,401 hits, 444 home runs on this card. So just incredible. And we'll start with subsets here. So we have these rookie parades. And this card I picked because it has Bob Uecker. It's rookie card there in these.
Which is probably the most popular card in the 62 set. I would say at this point in my life, 50% of the people who come to me with 62 want lists, this is their last card they need for the set. Some just don't want to pay the money because Bob Uecker may be famous, but he's not a Hall of Famer famous.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough, I mean, these rookie parades are tough cards legitimately. But the Uecker got that extra boost and never really calmed down. And we talked about this on one of the episodes with Dr. Beckett, that the other thing is these look at this. You've got 5 different teams on the card.
Right.
You know, not all of them are heavily collected, but there are there's enough Cleveland collectors, enough Cincinnati collectors, and enough Dodgers collectors where they just need them for the set. And Uecker and then Ken Retzer, that's enough to to also get into the team set problem.
Yeah. So the demand is really high, which drives up the price.
Right. And they're tough cards. So you really hit the jackpot with this one.
Yeah. All right. So next, I just wanted to show 3 images of just cards that I really love in this set. The Maris, the Clemente, and the Aaron. I just think they're beautiful cards. Especially with Maris having 61 there on the back of the card. It's just really awesome. Next, we'll go into more checklists. So there's 7 checklists in this card, 1 for each series. And Rich, if you don't mind, when you say high numbered, does that include like 5, 6, 7, or is that just the 7 series? Like
usually high numbers just mean the last series.
Just mean
there are some years where you can throw a blanket over the last 3 or 4 series. 65, for example, when we get to it. You can basically throw a blanket over the last 3 or 4 series. They're all tough. I tell people 65s, the 300s are tougher than the high numbers. At least they were in New Jersey when I was collecting the set and dealing in vintage cards. We didn't call them vintage in the late 70s, but they were vintage cards. Yeah. But most of them, with the exception of like 65 where you can throw a blanket over, the high series is the last series usually.
Okay. Thank you for that. And now we'll go into these team cards. I picked the New York Yankees. So that's the image of the front and the back of those. So there should be, 16? Let's see.
There should be 18.
18 of them. Yeah. Yeah. By
the way, one other thing about high numbers is 57 and 58 are a little goofy. Because 57, the toughest series is what they call the semi-high series, or the one before the high numbers. And 58, there's really not a super tough series, but 58 runs in reverse, where the cards get easier as the numbers get higher, which never happened again in card history.
Okay. Wow. I did not know that. So, all right, we'll keep moving. Here's a subset of the league leader cards. I think there's 10 of them, 5 American League and 5 National. So the American League had the red in the back, and the yellow background is the National League. So there's 10 of those in the set. And next I wanted to do to point out this 10-card run of Babe Ruth cards they did in the 62 set. And these are 3 of the ones that I really liked. But I made this slide here too because I wanted to ask you, Rich, if you could talk about this like green tint variations and what's this all about, because you can really see the green.
We believe there was possibly a second printer making these 62 cards. As we noticed, as we talked about in 60, with the sheer volume of cards, in 61, the first two series had tons of cards. It's possible Topps was trying a second printer. And as you can see, it's obvious they didn't get the ink quite right between the regular card with the blue background and the green tints. And the green tints aren't super hard to find, but they are tougher to find than the regular cards. But today the value's about the same. But, I actually collected a master set of 62s back in the day.
Okay. Now, so is it considered a master set have all the green tint?
Yes. In my opinion, absolutely.
Okay.
And there's a couple cards it's really hard to tell the difference. So there's a couple cards you can fake it. I think like Eddie Fisher, for example, or somebody like that, where you really can't tell the difference between green tint and regular, but most of them are like that, fairly obvious.
Okay. All right. Next, we're going to go into, Musial Blast 21st season. And these are just highlights from the 1961 season. So
I just want to tell a quick story.
Sure.
One of the reasons I love cataloging so much is when I was collecting this set, the checklist at the time called card number 318, action card number 8. I'm at Sports Corner at the time. I'd go there maybe once every couple months. And in the showcase, there's the Switch Hitter Connects, which is the Mantle card. Mm-hmm. That's action card number 8, but nobody called it a Mickey Mantle card.
Wow. Well,
and so you want to fix that. You don't want people trying to figure out that what the heck action card 8 is. I think Musial might be action card 6 or 9 or whatever, and Maris I think is 313. You want to identify them by who the player is, because if I'm a Maris collector, action card 3 is not going to cut it. Roger Maris, that's going to cut it.
Right. Yeah, the 9 cards were numbered 311 to 319, I believe. Yeah. So, all right, we'll keep moving here. So there's 20 Sporting News All-Star cards. 10 of them are in the American League and 10 are National League cards. I just loved all 3 of these with Klein and Mickey and Willie Mays. So you can see the blue background is for National League. So just liked all 3 of those.
Do you, Mike, do you have the manager's dream card on one of these slides? The 62 manager's dream with Mantle and Mays?
Well, we'll see. I don't know. It's been a few days since I've looked through these 62 slides, so see what we got here. And like Rich was talking about earlier, this is the first year of the New York Mets. So the first series with Casey Stengel, he doesn't have a logo. And these higher numbered cards, you can see the New York Mets uniforms. So I thought that was really cool. So there's that. And then I love these trophy cards of Billy Williams' second year and Joe Torre's rookie card. And yeah, Joe Torre's, that's an expensive card if you're looking for a nice copy.
Yeah.
So I was looking at like a PSA 6 at the National, and the guy wanted over $200 for it. So
wow.
Yeah. So I think that's all I have. Nope, here we go.
The manager's dream card right on cue.
I had a question for Rich about the manager's dream card. I've been trying to figure out who's in the background. I could see Hank Aaron to the right or behind Willie Mays. Who's in between Mantle and Mays?
Hold on. I'm actually going to give you the answer. I'm glad I'm at work where I can look that up. Because I'm pretty sure I identified Elston Howard, Ernie Banks, and Hank Aaron are in the background.
Oh, so to the far left, that's Elston Howard?
Yes.
And in the middle is Ernie Banks?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. We couldn't figure out who was in the middle for years.
Well, we had some mistakes too, but somebody pointed out who they really were, and we fixed that. And it's actually listed in the COMC. If you go to COMC, all I did was type in 1962-18.
Right.
It popped right up.
Okay. Awesome.
Cool. I always wanted to know that.
There you go.
Well, all you have to do, trust me, when I say I like my COMC job for adding information, guess what?
There you go. Awesome. All right, so here are the two rookie card Hall of Famers, the Gaylord Perry and the Lou Barak. And just corners are really tough on these old cards. It's really easy to chip the corners of these. So finding a really nice example is really, really tough, and you're going to pay for it for sure. So, all right, next we're going to go from 62 to 63. And they actually dropped in total cards from 598 to 576. And there's 7 series in this set, just like the 1960 and 61. So there's a theme throughout the whole 60s that I learned that there's 7 different releases. So nowadays they have like Top Series 1, 2, and Update. And back then there was just so many different releases. So I mean, you could easily miss like Series 3 if you didn't go to the store in the 60s, I'm sure. For 6 weeks, they'd be gone. So, all right. So here's a better shot at 1963 Stan Musial card. So it's got that kind of half smile going on, but really nice, great design. There's next. I just wanted to show, 3 first ballot Hall of Famers here, and the Mays, Aaron, and the Mantle. All beautiful cards. And then we've got the most expensive card in the whole set. The card that Ray really, really, really wants, but needs another stimulus check or win the lottery or something to
hey,
get
it's $332 million today, so... And the other one, I believe, is 305. So you got to be in it to win it. So
yeah,
$5 each or $10 each. Just, hey, if you get that, then you'll certainly be able to get a Pete Rose at any condition you so desire.
Now, Rich, I've heard stories that there's a lot of with the Rose rookie. There's a lot of counterfeits. Is that true?
Correct. Most of them are labeled counterfeits. About 1982. Jack Petrozelli, who's no longer with us, was a detective. He was a big card collector. He was also a detective in California. And he discovered what was going on when somebody came to a show and tried to sell like 120 of them to a dealer. And they were able to figure out the difference. And most of the counterfeits have been dealt with accordingly. Most of them are stamped on the back counterfeit.
Okay.
I know when Beckett Grading began, I bought a counterfeit example for the grading team, so they would know what it looked like, because they were nicely stamped. Whatever it cost was not super expensive.
Okay.
But this was about the second really well-known card that was counterfeited, after the 59 Ted Williams number 68 card that him and Bucky Harris, that was a short print that they had to pull. So this was the first really high-powered counterfeited card.
Okay. All right, next is the rookie card. There's only one, well, sort of one in this set, at least baseball-wise, and that's of Willie Stargell. And I believe Ray just got this card this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this card.
Yep. So that's that there. And then this is another rookie card Hall of Famer, but he's actually from the NBA, and there's 2 different versions of this. And I think you, Rich, you and Dr. Beckett went over the 63 set and talked about Dave. How do you say his last name?
DeBusschere.
DeBusschere? Okay.
DeBusschere.
Yeah. So he played with the White Sox, it says here on the side, 62 and 63. And then, went over to the NBA. Well, actually was in the NBA in 62 and the major leagues at the same time. So it was kind of like a Bo Jackson or Deion Sanders, dual stars. So he played with the Pistons, the Knicks. I think he won a couple rings with the Knicks, and was a head coach, and was inducted in the Basketball Hall of Fame in 1983.
And there's a famous story that the White Sox wanted to keep DeBusschere, so they had to expose to waivers another pitcher in 63.
Okay.
The other pitcher's name was Denny Mclean, who the Tigers picked up.
Wow.
You might want to think they'd like that one back.
Right. Rich, isn't the Steve Dalkowski rookie in this set too?
It sure is. It's a tough, popular card too. It's in the 6 series, And 63 is one of these rare series where some people do consider in the price guide pricing too, considers the 6 series more expensive than the last series. They're both reasonably tough, but I've had 3 Dalkowski cards in the last 10 years since I've started dealing again. None have ever lasted more than a shell.
He's popular. He's really popular.
It's tough, and it's like euchre. It's tough, and it's popular. And if you're a certain age or you like a certain era, Dalkowski, euchre, they're those legendary guys. That
mythology, yeah. Steve Dalkowski is like mythology.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So there's this famous photo error here from Ryan Duran.
Ryan Duran.
Oh, yeah.
Ryan Duran, excuse me. So he's on both of these cards, but his name is different. So I think they got mixed up on the photos. So it's Ryan on both photos. So there's a photo error there. And then I learned of another one of Hall of Famer Ron Santo. You can see it's obviously him on the Don card. So I thought that was interesting and worth putting in the slides.
Wow. I didn't know
so
that.
that we did that one. And then here we go with the team cards again. I think there's 20 of them in the set, one for each team. And the Cincinnati Reds here. And next, I'll go through the checklist. There's 7 checklists. You know, there was a checklist for each series. So this is the second one. And now we'll get into some of the subsets. So we have these American League leader cards again.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're like that. I believe they're the first 10 cards in the set. And who's on here? Harmon Killebrew. And I think he had 48 home runs, and he led the league there in 1962. Let's keep going here. So here's the World Series cards. And this is Maris hitting probably home run. I think there's 7 cards, and they're all printed in the Series 2, I believe. And the Yankees did beat the Giants in 7 to win.
And one thing is, most of these World Series cards going forward, and I think they missed 66, but they're printed in a fairly early series.
Yeah.
Because Topps understood that the kids, have shorter memories. They remember the World Series, but they want to get them. They're not going to print them late, in June. They're going to print them in January and February when the kids still remember and still maybe seeing an occasional World Series highlight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, thank you for that. And here's the multiplayer cards. I counted 11 of them in the set, and this is a nice one with Ernie Banks and Hank Aaron. So that's a image of those multiplayer cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's these inserts, these peel-offs. There's like 46 different stickers, and they don't have numbers on them. In the almanac, they're just listed alphabetically. So were these Rich, the first inserts Topps ever had?
I think there are stamps inserts in 61 and 62.
Okay.
And then these are in 63. And what's really cool about these is these come with and without the peel-off directions on the back. There's no pricing differential, but there are some that don't have the peeling information and some do.
Huh.
It's perfectly fine either way. They're just cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're pretty small. They're smaller than a regular Topps card at the time. So that's really neat. All right, now we'll move into 64. So you went from 576 to 587 in 1964. And I transitioned over to Mantle because there isn't a mutual card anymore, unfortunately.
Just a note, I love a career capper card. And it always annoys me that Topps knew they could have done a 64 Stan Musial card early in the set, get the complete stats, and say he announced his retirement, and get it. And to me, just honor players like that. And
yes,
I know they were doing it for the kids, but in retrospect, I think even the kids would have enjoyed a Stan Musial card in 64.
Yep, I agree.
So here's a better look at the Mickey's card, front and back there.
This is one of the 3 really accessible 60s Mantle cards.
Yeah.
The 64, 66, and 68 are all really accessible Mantle cards. So you can buy this at, there's no such thing as cheap, but you can buy those 3 at very reasonable prices, even raw, or maybe 5 or 6 graded, and at least start your Mantle collection.
Is it a double print card, Rich, this one?
What?
Is it double printed to 64?
I'm not sure, but it's certainly very available in the secondary market.
Yeah, and it's a lower number. It's in first series, so
Right.
maybe that has something to do with it. So, all right. Well, here's the checklist. There's 7 for each series. So that's an image of the checklist, the third one.
Mm-hmm.
Next is an image of the team cards. I thought I'd include the World Series champ Yankees there. So that's a cool image of the team cards. And here's 3 cards that I liked in the set. There's Casey Stengel, Pete Rose, and Hank Aaron. Just love those. And Casey looks, really old. I think he's 74 years old at the time.
Right. He's in his 70s at this
Yeah.
point. He's not exactly young.
Not actually young anymore. But there's a card later that will show of him, and it's with his hands up a little bit. Maybe it is the next year in 65. So those are 3 that I really liked. Here's 3 more. Ernie Banks, Sandy Koufax, and Duke Snider. They're in the Mets uniform, which is weird, but I did notice a lot of close-up headshots in this set. So that's what photographers did back then.
At least these 3, they're all wearing caps.
Yeah. Yep. And then we've got some rookies, Richie Allen that Ray loves. I know this is the second year for Tony Oliva and Tommy John, which is the guy that's named after Tommy John surgery.
And this also has the first of 3 rookie cards for Lou Piniella. There's in the 60s, for some reason, Rich, do you know they did a lot of rookie cards of the same
the biggest one is a guy by the name of Bill Davis, I believe is his name, and he's got a rookie card each year from 65 to 69. He got 5 shots at it, and I think he has maybe 200 career plate appearances total.
So Tony Oliva is a borderline Hall of Famer, so I wanted to show this 64 card and then show his real rookie in 63. So you can see it there in the bottom right-hand corner.
By the way, every player on that card had a decent to really good major league career in the 60s.
Yeah, Kranepool. Yeah, definitely Kranepool.
I mean, Bob Bailey played till 78, Oliva played till like 76, and Kranepool played to 79.
Yeah.
And if Max Alvis hadn't got meningitis, he might have played till the mid-70s too. Yep. That's just a card where everybody did fairly well in their major league career.
Right.
All right, we'll keep moving. This is the rookie card, Hall of Famer Phil Niekro. So I believe Ray's got this card.
I've owned exactly one of them in my life.
Yep. Now, is this one in the last series?
This is the last series high number rookie card. Correct.
Okay. Yep.
And interestingly, both those cards have the Milwaukee Braves. They're both wearing the cap logo. They're not. That doesn't always happen in those days, but both of them have the Braves logo on their cap.
Right.
Yeah. So, all right. So now we'll move into subsets. So we got the league leader cards. There's 12 of those. And I noticed 5 pitchers in 1963 had over 22 wins. So you can see in the right small photos, 25, 25, 23, 23, and 22, which is pretty amazing. I don't know if we really have that in baseball anymore.
You're lucky to get 15 or 16 nowadays.
Yeah. With wins. So Sandy Koufax, Marisha, Spahn, and Jim Maloney there. And here's a really cool shot of Sandy Koufax in the World Series cards. There's 5 of these in the set. So I really like this example. And let's see. There's 11 combination cards or dual photo cards, and this is my favorite. Tops in the NL, Hank and Willie Mays, of course. So love that one. But I didn't really like this one, but I wanted to include it. Unfortunately, with Ken Hubbs as a memorial card of him, he died in a plane accident.
He's not the only player that passed on that's in the set.
Okay.
Oh,
Jim Umbricht, I believe, like number 387. The back of the card talks about Jim. Jim had a 2-year battle with cancer and kept pitching in the major leagues for those 2 years. And the back of the card mentions his passing. So we actually have 2 people in the set that passed. But the Hubs card, as you see, they made it later in the year. So they were able to really think about doing the in memoriam. They probably should have done that for Umbricht as well. But Hubbs was a Rookie of the Year. Yeah. Was almost considered a future superstar.
Yes.
Yeah. Really quite a shame. So now we'll move into the 65 set that Rich was mentioning a little bit ago. So we went, from 587 cards to 598. So I'll be using Mantle cards through the rest of this show. So here's a better look at the card. I just like the swing, the color, the design. I really enjoy 65s.
And this is one of the toughest, as I pointed out, Mantle cards of the 60s. If you look, I had pointed out that the 300s and 65 are probably tougher than the 500s. It's one of these rare sets where I can make the argument where a middle series is tougher than the high numbers. You do not see a lot of 65 Mantles on the secondary market.
Yeah. So here's a checklist. Is the 5th series. There's 7 again in this set. So that's an image of the checklists. And here's a team card from the Tigers. I just like this design all around. And then the Colt 45s became the Houston Astros. So you can kind of see in Series 1, they have the Colt 45s. In Series 4, there's, they used not Photoshop, but somehow got rid of the 45s there, but in Series 4. So you can kind of see the timeline of the set. The first couple series.
And it proved that all during the 60s, Topps was changing on the fly throughout the decade. I mean, if you look at the backs of some of the later series cards, like 67, 68, 69, and all these other years, they give you dates as to what's going on. So Topps is they're actually making last minute decisions. This is a last minute decision.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So even you can see in the Joe Morgan rookie card, it's got 45s. He's part of the first series, and by Series 5, they've scratched off the 45s from the hats there. So wanted to show that. And here's 3 more cards I really liked of the set. Al Kaline, this Bob Uecker is not cheap. It's my favorite looking Bob Uecker card. Then I put 74 years old for Casey Stengel there. So similar to
Bob Uecker. We showed the high number earlier. Bob Uecker has a fascinating card history for a guy that's only on Topps cards for 6 years. We've talked about how brutally tough it is for people to get the high number card. His 64 card is in the last series, the high numbers. This is number 519, not quite a high number, but it's a reverse negative, or he's goofing around, and all of a sudden he's batting lefty when he's a righty.
Yeah.
And 66 has and I don't know if you put the slide in, but 66 has a variation in it. Yep. So there's 4 of the first 5 years of Bob Uecker's have some funky things going on with them, which is pretty amazing if you think about it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so here's the 3 other cards I like: the Pete Rose, Sandy Koufax, and Bob Gibson. Just love those classic cards; they're really awesome. Here we go with Richie Allen, Ray's a big fan of this card. Tony Oliva and the Lou Brock, they're just really nice cards.
And he should be a fan of the Richie Allen card. That's a fairly tough card to get, and as a Phillies guy, that's a good card to have in your collection. As you can see, it's much more visually appealing than a 64 rookie card.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, definitely.
Yep, and hard to find centered. These 65s I noticed were really tough for centering. All right, now for speaking of rookie cards, so these are 4 rookie cards in the set: the Morgan, the Carlton, Tony Perez, and Catfish Hunter. I think Catfish Hunter is a high numbered.
It is. So is Tony Perez. And take a good look. Topps missed it. Take a look how they spelled Catfish Hunters. I believe it's on the back.
It's on the back.
The front is correct, but take a look at the back.
Yeah, I don't have an image of the back, but
they call him Tim on the back.
They put Tim Hunter.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yep.
So Tim, Jim, maybe the
typewriter. Yeah, it's all the same.
Yeah. All right, so some subsets. We've got the league leader cards. So we've got Harmon Killebrew. He had 49 home runs, and Willie Mays there in the National League. He had 47 home runs to lead the National League. So there's the subset of that. Then we've got World Series cards again. So there's 8 World Series cards in the set, and here's 2 of them. So the St. Louis Cardinals beat the Yankees in the 64 series, and Bob Gibson won the Game 7. I think it was his 3rd start in the series on 2 days rest. What did I read? That Bob Gibson threw the game really fast because he was so tired that he just...
The amazing thing with Bob Gibson is Bob Gibson pitches 64, 67, 68 in the World Series. Mm-hmm. Each World Series, he pitches 3 games. I believe all 9 games are complete games. I don't think they ever relieve him in a World Series game. And he won 7. I believe he won 7 of the 9. The only ones he lost was like game 1 or game 2 in 64, and then game 7 in 68.
Yeah.
But he was just dominant. I mean, you talk about a guy who will throw pitching. He, in the World Series, nothing stopped him.
Yeah. And I wouldn't want to be the manager to go out there and say, you go to the bench. We got to relieve.
And that's the thing. He tires in that game. You see what the final score is. He gives up a couple homers to the Yankees in the 9th inning. And Johnny Keane, who's ending up going to manage the Yankees the next year, Sunday asked him, he says, look, I'm managing with my heart. I am not taking him out. I think he knew if he even thought about taking him out, that he might get a baseball thrown at him, and he probably didn't want that to occur.
Yeah. All right, so now we'll move from 65 to 66. Same number of cards in the set. So just a little bit different design. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the 61s there at the bottom of the card. But really easy to read. Nice photo there of Mantle. So here's a closer look. On the back, you can read the stats really well. Cartoon is there. I mean, it's great card. All right, so here's a checklist. This is an example of the 6 series. And there's, of course, 7 of those in the whole set. And here's an example of the team cards. So how many teams are 20 teams?
There's 20 teams, yes. And I don't remember if they did a Houston team or not, but we'll just say there are 20 teams in the majors in these years.
Yeah, and in 66, the Angels changed from the Los Angeles Angels to the California Angels.
Correct.
And the Houston Astros changed to the Atlanta Braves.
So, you mean Milwaukee Braves changed to the Atlanta Braves?
That's what I mean. Yep, Milwaukee Braves. Yep. All right. So here we go. And then here's an example of it. So 65 with Hank. So we've got the M on the hat. Now he has the A on the hat there in 66. So,
right.
Yep. So we've got a team card of the Angels. This is California Angels there. And here's some cards I liked in the set. The Yaz, the McCovey, and the Willie Mays. Like those a lot. And I went to the Marisha I like, the Joe Morgan. That's pretty much my favorite Joe Morgan card. And the Bob Gibson looks a little bit like the 65 photo, but it's still a great card. And then I had to put in the Don Mossy card for us guys, and a great Maris card. And Rico Petrocelli put that in for Ray. Ray watches a show with Rico.
Right, he does it with Tom Sabala, and that's a really fun show. The two of them do. I met them at the National a couple times. They're really good people. It's fun. It's fun to talk to them. They just love baseball, and they interact so well together.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right, so there's 3 rookie card Hall of Famers: Don Sutton, Jim Palmer, and Fergie Jenkins. So those are the 3 cards there. Just great cards. Let's keep moving. There's dual cards here. Let's see. Combination.
And interestingly, they only have a couple. There's none like after 199. There's like none for the rest of the set. They gave up on that very early in 66.
Yeah, I think I counted 5 of them in the whole set, and they were really only. I was looking at my Topps photo book, and I think they're all released in one series, in like the 4th series.
The 1st and the 2nd series, and as we've talked about, the 1st and the 2nd series are also very, very easy in 66. I mean, really easy.
So, all right. So here's some more of those cards. Bob and Rusty Staub. So I just thought I'd include that. And now back to these league leader cards. Seem to have these in every set. And I just was looking at this earlier today and just how dominant Sandy Koufax was. I wasn't alive at this time, but it's incredible. He's on 3 of these league leader cards. He had the most strikeouts, the most wins, the lowest ERA, was a triple crown for pitching, and he finished second to Willie Mays in MVP.
Well, Willie Mays only hit 52 homers that year at the age of 60, at the age of 34. So, I mean, it's not like Willie Mays exactly had a bad year either. But you're right. Koufax was historical. That's the year he set at the time the strikeout record with like 382 that, Ryan broke with 383 about about a decade later. But one of the first books I read was the Sandy Koufax autobiography, which is actually a very interesting read. Yeah. And, he talks about the pain he has pitching in those days. I mean, as he said, somebody said they worked out the schedule. His arm was never, the only time his arm was never sore was between the first and the 9th inning. And then it would be sore for the next 3 days until his next start. That's the way he worked his schedule out. I mean, and he just realized he pitched one more year, and he realized if he wanted to have any sort of a life after baseball, he just had to stop pitching, which is why he retired so early. People wonder why. Well, he wanted to have a life. He knew that he lived quietly, so he didn't need money. And then he became an announcer for a few years, so that probably got him the extra money for him to comfortably live the rest of his life.
Yeah. And I think he's the oldest living Hall of Famer right now. Maybe Willie Mays.
Willie Mays is older.
Yeah, so you can zoom in and 382 there. And here's a National League batting leaders. I wanted to show this one because there's so many players that are over 300. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 players just in the National League hit 300.
Yeah.
So many of them were close. So I just long for this type of baseball.
Yeah.
And it's just not there right now in 2021. So we'll let's see. I guess we'll move here into 67. So we went from 598 to 609. So that's 11 more cards. And that's a closer image there. I know Ray doesn't really like this.
That's just a great looking mantle card.
Yeah.
Forget, skip anything else. That's just a good look. 67 is my favorite design of the 60s. And you can see from the mantle why it's such a good design.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ray's mentioned that he thinks he kind of looks a little intoxicated, but
I met him a couple times when he was still living because, I moved to the DFW area. And I will tell you, if we ever, we would see Mantle sometimes, and I can rest assured that he was usually had a drink or two in him if you saw him outside a show situation at any time. So Ray's probably right that he was probably a little bit recovering at that point. But a quick note, both 66 and 67, we talked about 61 earlier. 66 and 67 have some of the really toughest high numbers to get, the last series. Those two series, and Ray can probably tell you about card number 591 and 66. I don't know if he still needs it or not, but good luck with that if you still need it, Ray. That's the Grant Jackson rookie.
Oh, forget that.
Okay, forget that. 67 has one of the toughest Phillies rookies too.
That's tough.
Don Shaw, Gary Sutherland, 587 card, which was super popular because it's got a Met on it and a Phillies on it. So, in the megalopolis, where I grew up dealing, you had no trouble ever selling that card because tough and two of the most popular teams being collected. So, Ray, you have my condolences trying to finish a 67 set. I believe also Jim Bunning is a tough 67 high number 2. I believe it's number 560. So there are some tough high numbers for you to get. So if you haven't gotten them yet, go chase them down.
67 Brooks Robinson is on my list too, and that's very high.
Yes, it is. That's a very tough card to find.
Yeah. So this is the first set, I believe, since 1956 that had autographs on them too. So it had been a good 10 years since Topps put autographs on cards. So that's that. Here's a checklist. There's 7 of those. This is a different design.
Notice this is the first year and it would go on for another couple years where Topps put the floating head of a player on the checklist card.
On the checklist,
Yeah.
yep.
And there's I used Mantle because it was one easy to find. And then the rookie cards, Rod Carew and Tom Seaver. I believe those are both high numbers.
They are 581 for Seaver, 569 for Carew.
Yep. And here's a subset for the World Series cards. And this is the Orioles win 4 straight. So
and look how high Brooks Robinson is jumping. You don't realize what a good athlete he was. Look how high he's in the air.
Yeah. Yep. And I thought these cards kind of looked like
I was just about to say that. Yeah.
62 and the 55 Bowman. So I wanted to put a slide in there so you can kind of see the TV there and the TV. So I wanted to put a slide to show that. And then we get into these league leader cards. So we got the RBI leaders and the ERA leaders, just examples of the league leader cards. I think there's 12 total. And here's some like dual cards. And I really loved this number 1, the champs card.
You want a funny story? You see that number 1 card? The next year they would do a card called Bird's Belter, and they would do some photoshopping. They would just get rid of Hank Bauer in that card.
I might show that one later, so when we get to it. But I'd really like that card.
But that's card number 1. That's I believe the first time they did a card like that is card number 1, and that's just a really cool card to have. And that was good to get a card like that honored the World Series of the year before.
Right.
Absolutely. And I got to meet Brooks at the last Cleveland National. Got a picture with him, and he couldn't have been a nicer guy. So I was
speaking
really
of
happy
Cleveland, I just saw an article saying the IX Center, they're going to try to rebring it back to life, so to speak.
Awesome.
And I do and don't like Cleveland for the National. There are certain things, positive, negative. But I emailed an internet friend of mine from a music trivia game. I said, hey, looks like we have a shot for dinner in 2022.
Yeah. It's hard to get hotels. You just can't straight walk to the facility. You need an Uber or a car or something.
And they do run shuttles to and from the show. And I know when we did it, when I went out with COMC, I made sure the hotel wasn't great, but we were across the street from a mall. So we could walk, and there was a couple restaurants attached to the mall. So we weren't like dependent on room service or pizza delivery. We actually were able to eat real food.
Yes.
All right. So here's a look at the team cards of the Cardinals.
I want to tell one of my favorite stories. I'm seeing the Cardinals team.
Go ahead.
We talk about the high numbers. For some reason, the 6 series did not make it to Seattle. To St. Louis, but the 7 series did. So the 7 series, if you wanted to buy high numbers, you went to St. Louis back in the day. Mm-hmm. When I did the 84 National, my first sale at the 84 National was a dealer from St. Louis who bought every single 6 series 67 card I had. And how Topps didn't realize the Cardinals were going to win the World Series in 67 and skipped sending them the 6 series, but made sure at least to send them the 7 series. So they got it half right.
So awesome. All right. So now for some cards that I like in the set. This is also my favorite looking set of the 1960s. So we got Klein, Frank Robinson, Ernie Banks. Just love these photos. Don Sutton, Lou Brock, Joe Morgan. Just awesome photos. Harmon Killebrew I like. Second year for Jim Palmer, Juan Marisha. Just beautiful. The color pops. You can see the background. They're all at a stadium, different stadiums. So it's just awesome. Here's Pete Rose, Willie McCovey, and there's that Brooks Robinson you were talking about. I think that's number 600.
It's a tough card.
Yep.
Short print.
Yep. So now we'll move into 68. So it actually dropped, 11 cards in this set. So
by the way, 68 is the first set I actually opened packs in Mantle, and I didn't get to open cards. I didn't open packs until the 3rd series. The third series has Mantle cards. So I at the age of 7 was opening packs with Mickey Mantle in them. That was my first series. It's all downhill since then.
Yeah, 518 home runs there. That's just awesome to see that. So here's an example of a checklist. This is from the third series. There's seven checklists in the set. Now we go to the famous rookie cards of Johnny Bench and Nolan Ryan. And I looked it up, and these aren't high numbers. The Bench is Series 3, and Ryan is in Series 2. So is that
note on the Bench is a fairly easy card. I believe it's a double print, even though I've never seen a sheet that verified that.
Okay.
The Ryan card, there's like a spelling error on the 11th line. And out of all the articles, when I was writing the errors and variation column, the second iteration for Beckett from like 2000 to 2007, the most responses I ever got to one of my errors and variation columns is when, and I always credited the person who sent in the E and V because, everybody wanted to be the one spotlighted. There's a certain ego to that. But I wrote about that, and I would average maybe 10, 20, 30 responses to any E and V column I got, or, hey, here's an interesting E and V for you. I probably got over 100 emails to that Nolan Ryan thing, and they corrected it on some set way down the line. Like 40 years later, 35 years later, we finally found it. They finally corrected the spelling version. But it's a really fascinating typo that, and it's a long bio, so, you can see how it got missed. But I had never gotten so many visceral reactions as I did to finding a typo on that card.
Yeah. All right. Well, now we'll move into the league leader cards. There's 12 of them in the set. And it's really weird not seeing Sandy Koufax in any of these cards because I believe he retired after the 66 season. So he was only 30 years old. He had, in 1966, I wrote down he had, he just won the Cy Young, 3 out of the last 4 years.
Games. He was like 26-8. As I said, he again, I think, won the most wins. He had the ERA title. He had the strikeout title. It was the same thing as 65. Not quite as good, but pretty darn good. And as I said, he just said, "I've had enough, and I'm leaving."
It's amazing. Yeah. All right. So here's the World Series card for the Cardinals. So, and I think it also looks like that 51 Bowman. So I put them right side by side. You can see the television outline. And the people that are like under 30 years old probably don't even know what like a tube TV is, but believe us, this is what TVs look like in the 50s and 60s. So they were actually a piece of furniture. People would, like a mantle and put things on the top, and your VCR or whatever would. Anyhow, getting off topic here. So then we get into these sporting news cards, and this is the first time since 62 that Topps had these sporting news cards, so I wanted to include that. And
interestingly, in 68 and 69, they form a puzzle on the back. The news had text, but these years there's a puzzle piece.
Yeah, so here's like part of an arm there for Clemente, and then I put a Yaz, and you can see his face. So do you know what the puzzle makes?
I believe it's Carl Yastrzemski and Lou Brock. I'm not exactly positive, but obviously Carl Yastrzemski.
Yeah, because you can see his face there.
And to me, that's just a great card. Yaz front, Yaz back.
Well, he had an incredible, 67 seasons, so it makes sense.
326, 44, 121, ties for the home run lead, wins the RBI and the batting title. He's at the time, Frank Robinson won the Triple Crown in 66. I'm a young kid. I'm thinking, Triple Crown winners. Oh, this is a commonplace thing.
Never again until 40 years
Never again
later.
until Miggy Cabrera in like 2011. And it's like 44 years between Triple Crowns. Like, oh, wait a second. What I thought was common, it was reasonably common.
No.
Nah, not so much.
Yeah. And then there's these combo cards, and I included 3 of them. I think there's only 3 in the whole set. And out of all these, all of them are Hall of Famers except for Chico. And I just liked them all, so I put them here on this slide. And here's that Bird Belters card, Rich.
Yeah, and if you go back to 67, you can see how they've like photoshopped it a little and got rid of Hank Bauer.
Yeah, I never thought of that. Yeah, how they got rid of him. So I don't have a slide comparing the two, but you can rewind the episode and check it out if you like. And here's some cards that I liked. I've got 2 slides. Here's that Denny Mclean, because he had 31 wins.
Yep, 31 and 6, and won the Cy Young, and deservedly so. Even though a couple guys may have, like Luis Tint had a 1.6 ERA, and won 21 games for a Cleveland team, not as good. But it's kind of hard not to give an award to a guy who wins 30 games for the first time in 34 years.
Yeah. So a Seaver card, I love that card. Bob Gibson card. So I think all these are on your 300 great baseball cards, aren't they, Ray?
Yeah.
Yep.
So you're collecting a 300 great baseball, the Beckett book from?
Yeah, tell him, Ray. Go ahead.
Tom Zappola. No, Mike Payne.
Yes. Well, I wrote about 25% of those bios, and if you know me, you can figure out which bios I wrote.
Okay.
Mike Payne did a great job with that book, but it was just so much work. And I was having a lighter schedule at the time. So I would meet with him fairly regularly. He'd just assign me 5 or 6 to do, and I'd whip them off the top of my head. But one thing we were very careful about is we tried not to just do the most expensive cards. Right. Like, for example, there's a 57 Topps Don Zimmer in there.
Yes.
Because it's a cool card.
Yeah.
And it was like we wanted to have something that wasn't like, okay, the most expensive card. And we wanted to have some of that in there, too, because, we wanted it to be more than just the draw, the droll, hey, these are the 10 most expensive cards, so these are the ones you should buy. You pointed out the Don Mossy card in 66. I had somebody go crazy when I was at the Dallas Card Show last weekend because I throw cards into my showcases. I feel like it. Well, one card I threw in was the 55 Topps Don Mossy rookie. Mm-hmm. And I explained the ugliness factor. And they took a look and they said, yeah, this is a great card. And I think they bought it. It was like, it's cool to have cards displayed for reasons just not of price.
Right.
You have to appreciate the older cards to understand that, we appreciate those cards for different reasons than people appreciate the cards today.
Right. Yeah. Like the Oscar Gamble card and the Kurt Bavacqua. I mean, those are fun cards. They're pretty popular too.
They're all very popular. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. And that's one of the, as I pointed out, that's one of the great joys of these 60s cards. And we've touched upon them, not overly dwelled, but there's a lot of really cool cards. One of my favorite cards is the 64 Topps Ray Sadecki card, where they crap the background of whatever grass. It's like keep off the grass, but the sign is missing everything. But the only thing is in grass, they don't have the G and the R showing.
Okay.
And
it's not the Billy Ripken FF card.
Right.
But it's kind of funny to see a 64 card with that verbiage on it.
Yeah, I'll have to look that one up. Yeah, that's new to me. So yeah, Rich, Ray's been collecting that 300 set for almost 6 years now.
Yeah.
I think you're at what, 191 cards?
190.
190 cards. So
that was one of my favorite projects I ever worked on at Beckett. I have a credit, I'm not the writer, but I have a credit. I did about 25%, and it's fine. I have my credit in there. And if you know me, you know which bio, if you have that book, I could probably tell you which bios I wrote, but I'm going to challenge you to figure it out.
Yeah, we do. We'll have to have you back on sometime and we can go over it.
Absolutely. Definitely.
Yeah. All right. So let's keep moving here. And I got to click maybe. There we go. All right. So some cards I like here in 68, the Lou Brock, I like, just he's smiling, great smile. Clemente and McCovey, both good cards there. And then here we get into these teams cards. And I did the team card because they moved from Kansas City to Oakland. Mm-hmm. So that's why I wanted to.
But another team card in this series is the Tigers team card in the same last series that has always been a brutal card to get. It's been super popular.
Okay, great. I'm going to definitely watch this episode again and take some more notes.
I have to take a lot of notes.
Yeah, this is awesome. All right, so I wanted to talk about these cards because you can see what Topps did. They looked like a green Sharpie or something and put it over the Kansas City logos because they didn't have new photos of the players in Oakland. So
Yeah.
You know,
There's
looking
some
at these, it's too bad
I
Topps
can kind of
didn't
see
do
Lou
coach
Krause's
cards
AC.
on the fly, you know, because you know who became a coach for the 68 Oakland A's?
DiMaggio.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
Wouldn't it have been cool to have a Joe DiMaggio? You know, obviously he would have had to have a contract with Topps, which I think took forever and a day. But wouldn't it have been cool if they had a contract and done coach cards in 68, you know, active coaches, and put Joe DiMaggio on a card, especially considering, you know, Paul Simon is talking about him and a #1 single in the summer of 68. Where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio?
Right.
Well, if we had worked it out, he'd been on a Topps card in 68.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's this like green version, and then there's these black cards that just confused me that they put black over. I don't know why they just didn't use green the whole time, but there's a lot of examples of these A's cards that are black. So, you know, I have a lot of positive things for Topps, but this one I just kind of shook my head about, especially if like my dad was Dave Duncan. But yeah, that's what they did.
Yeah.
All right. Any more
Dave
comments?
Duncan's son played in the major leagues. Unfortunately, we lost him way too young. So, you know, he actually had a son that played. Chris Duncan played Major League Baseball, and I believe passed of a brain tumor at a way too young of an age.
So, all right. So, us baseball historians will know that from 1968 season to 69 season was the first divisional era. So, I thought I'd put a slide on here so people would understand what baseball was like in 69. So they split the leagues into two from East and West. And then they added what the Padres, Seattle Pilots, and Kansas City Royals, because Kansas City lost the Athletics, and then they got the Royals like a year later. And Rich, can you tell us a little history about the Seattle Pilots and just
the great thing with the Seattle Pilots is we have a first-person narrative of most of the season for the team with Jim Bounton's Ball 4. You know, it was a book that shook up baseball for many reasons, basically showing ball players were human. They cursed. They did things on the road that you would think that most grown men would do, but baseball players were never considered to do things like that. They were always covered up by the writers. And we have a first-person narrative of real people doing real things. And the other thing that Ball 4 is really important about, and it even touches on the baseball card thing, is that it shows how the players have been underpaid for all the years. Mm-hmm. In some ways, Ball 4 may be the most important baseball book ever written. And I can even come up with a hypothesis that Ball 4 led to Watergate, the Watergate reporting. Mm-hmm. Because all of a sudden, you're not afraid to do some muckraking and dig deeper because, hey, if baseball's been done, now these politicians can get done. So I think Ball 4 in some ways has some lasting effects on society, where it shows everybody's human, and it changed sports writing from what was going on too. So it's and it's the only season for the Seattle Pilots. Some of the 1970 cards also list them as Seattle Pilots. Mm-hmm. But you got 1 year, you got first-person narrative, you've got a story there, and all these people have personalities. And it's so nice to see that. I mean, wouldn't it have been nice to have like first-person personality on the Federal League of 1914-15? I don't think we have much information on that.
Right.
We have plenty on the 69 Pilots. I mean, the memorabilia and the cards are tough, but at least we have enough history on the team.
Right. Yeah, definitely. They could make a Hollywood movie off of that season, I'm sure. So. All right, now let's get into these cards. So the 68 had 598, and then in 1969, with more teams, they made more cards. So this is, at that time, this is the Topps largest set they ever produced with 664 cards.
Shattering the previous record by 55 cards. I mean, they just, it had crawled up, crawled down. They added 66 cards from 598 to 664. I mean, this is the biggest addition since 58 to 59. 58 is 480, 495. 59 is 572. That's 100 cards. This is the biggest addition since the 50s.
Mm-hmm. Pretty awesome. So here's the Mantle. Mantle's last Topps card. You can see if 536 there in home runs. It says He announced his retirement from baseball March 1st, 1969. So they did make a card for that.
There's two versions of that, though, right? Rich,
right. The Mantle name is in yellow letter and white letter. I've never owned a white letter Mantle. It's one of the few cards from that era I've never owned a copy of.
That's a very, that's a tough one.
It's a very expensive and very popular card.
Okay. All right. So here's an example of the checklists.
And that's a cheaper Mantle to get from that year.
Yeah, the checklist. Yep. Well, that's good from the 5th series. And now here's some expensive cards. Raleigh Fingers, I think he's a high number.
He is.
And Reggie Jackson, rookie, is not.
And Reggie Jackson's in the 3rd series, and some people consider that 3rd series from 219 to 327 as tough, if not tougher, than the last 2 series of 513 to 664.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's good to learn. Let's keep going here. So we got the subset, and of the league leaders, and I had to, do Bob Gibson in a 68 season, which is, ERA 1.12, which
year
is
of the pitcher, yeah.
The year of the pitcher.
You realize he was 22-9 that year. He lost 9 games with a 1.12 ERA.
That's even more remarkable than the ERA.
Yep, definitely the year of the pitcher. So you can see even in the American League, there were 5 pitchers that had a below 2 or a 1 point something ERA. So
I just noticed. Look how they misspelled Dave McNally's name on the back of the card.
Yep, with an E.
With an EY, yeah. Yep, I did notice that. So that's the red version for the American League cards. And you can just see the difference there with the ERAs. It's just amazing. Let's keep going here. So Sporting News World Series card. Let's see. The Tigers obviously won in 68 and beat the Cardinals. So that's a great card there. And then there's these combo cards, and I like the Ted Williams in the middle there, showing somebody how to hit. He loved hitting.
What's interesting with these combo cards in 69? They're all in the last couple series. There are no lower number combo cards. They're all higher number cards.
Yeah, they're all 4 of them are from the
66, where they're all in lower numbers. 69 is all in the higher numbers.
Yeah, 6 series. I think those are, but you are correct. All right, and then these really neat looking Sporting News cards, all-star cards. So the green ones, green backgrounds, were National League, and the red backgrounds were American League. So that's those cards. And I wanted to end these with a few slides of just cards that I liked from this set. The Banks, Clemente, Lou Brock, Johnny Bench is my favorite bench card. There's Gibson, an older Willie Mays. It's hard to see him when he's a little bit older, when we were looking at that 50, older cards from 1960 or so, Willie. So
I have a question for Rich on this set. Rich, what's with the Greg Nettles rookie, the loop, the no loop?
That's just one of those wild things. I have no idea what happened there, but there were some funky things in the first series. He might have been Elicio Rodriguez. They spelled his name with a G or a Q. You also have Paul Popovich and Ron Peronowski, where they didn't airbrush the logo out correctly on some of the cards, and they did on others. There are just some weird things going on 69 first series. I mean, I collected those cards as a kid, and that always was just fascinating. But and then you have the yellow and white letters in that 5th series we talked about Mantle. But there are some other great players. Gaylord Perry has a white letter card. Willie McCovey has a white letter card. There are some other good players that have those white letter cards in 69 as well. There are just some funky things going on in 69. Maybe they were using 2 printers again for some of it, and the printer A didn't do what printer B did, because that's the only thing I can come up with.
Yeah. Now, is there a more valuable version for the Nettles, a loop or no loop?
The Nettles, no. The white letters obviously are more valuable for the white. The Rodriguez, I believe, the incorrect spelling is more valuable. There's a couple checklist variations. I think the second series where it spells his name either Jim Purdon or John Purdon, and nobody really cares. The Netherlands is just a funky Arab. I've never had. I mean, I priced them the same. I sold them the same. Nobody ever said, "Oh, I had 10 of each and I was left with 9 loops and 1 no loop," or vice versa. So it was never an issue that way. It's just one of these inexplicable, what the heck are these guys doing?
Yeah. So, well, here's 3 other cards that I really liked in the set. The Carlton, the Nolan Ryan, which is a very popular card, and the Tom Seaver, which is kind of the same portrait photo from 68. But like those 3 cards, I guess I'm going to end on a Brooks card. And I just love this photo. And I think about this helmet. Like, it kind of looks like a plastic helmet that I got as a kid when you put ice cream in it from like Dairy Queen or something like that. It just doesn't seem like if he got hit in the head that it would really help. But
well, remember in those days that they were improving the helmets, but it took a while for the helmets to become really good.
Right.
Yep, and that's the last of my slides for 69. So we went through the whole decade of the 60s, and I thought I did a lot of preparation, and then Rich comes on and tells me all these things that I didn't find, which is great because he's been collecting and learning about these cards for a long time.
And I learned something too. In fact, I'm making a note right now about 65 Houston to look in the COMC database and make sure I get the difference between the 45s and the Astros. Because you're right. I never thought about that way. We probably assume they're all Astros, but the Morgan card's definitely a Colt 45 card.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, he's got the cap. You've got to make that a Colt 45 card.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I learned something too.
Awesome. Well, I'm surprised that I did that for you, but
well, it may have been something I might have known, but it's just something I hadn't thought about. You know, as I said, as I go through these things, a few days ago, I'm looking at the Hank Aaron card, I think from the Hank Aaron special, and I realized, wait a second, the 56 Aaron has Willie Mays sliding in the base in the background. Wait a second, that card's not linked to Willie Mays. So I went and linked them all to Willie Mays. You know, the 74s, the 56s. So sometimes even if it's subconsciously in my memory, I forget those things. Or I haven't thought about it in so long unless somebody points it out, because I'm now dealing with such a wider world than when I did the Beckett Almanac of Baseball Cards and Collectibles or the other annual guides. I'm still excited when I see new things. I tell the story that my good friend Hank Rhesus came in from Arizona to the March Dallas Card Show, and he had a 1970 Carolina Cougars ABA set that I'd never seen before, and he kept an old Sanchez, not Gary Sanchez, but an old Sanchez basketball price guide that had an incorrect checklist in there to show what we knew at the time and what we know now. And I was just excited because I didn't remember seeing that set for 40 years. Yeah. So I'm still excited when I see things I don't know. So, and that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, that was kind of one of the questions that I had for you, is like, how do you keep your vigor and excitement about the hobby after, you know, you've seen these 60s cards for 50 years? Like, how do you keep that enjoyment of something for that?
I learned, as you saw, I still learn things.
Still learning, yeah.
And the other thing is, I'm very blessed in my job that I do all sorts of funky things. I mean, I've identified a ton of 1930s German non-sports cards because they have actors and actresses, and I'll look up who these people are just to learn about them. And I'm fascinated in all these British non-sports sets. The British have a great history, and I've done a bunch of British non-sports stuff. I'm always fascinated, and you can read. Most of those are findable. You can look that up. So I stay invigorated. I just don't do 60 to 69 baseball or 70 to 79 baseball. I focus on them, but the way it's set up, I get to look at other stuff too.
That's great.
So I get to learn something every day. And it's like I tell my manager, who I always tell people, and they laugh, but I say, no, this is really true. He's better at his age than I was when I was his age. He's probably 15, 17 years younger than I am, but he's had to handle so many more different cards. I was more focused on baseball and then, some football and basketball book stuff and some hockey book stuff. He's had to do it all for 10 years, and he's the manager of the department. So he's gotten to see things that I would never have seen before. So they all say, no, you know more about vintage, and I probably do. But I'm telling you, there are some people whose breadth and depth of knowledge at COMC I would put against anybody out there.
Wow.
There was a question, did we touch base when we were talking about the 62 tops? Isn't there, Rich, two different color, like a lighter and a darker backdrop for the wood grain?
Yeah, and there's also that
numbers.
The 68, you can definitely tell in 68 the background is different with the like little wood grain background. And I think some of that has to do is Dave Hornish, who's done masterful work on Topps history, has surmised that they probably used two printers. And I bet the printing was just a little bit different. They didn't do all the printing out of Duryea, I suspect, during those years, especially during the peak printing times.
Right. What would you say is your favorite set from the 60s?
I did mention 67 is my favorite.
67.
Okay. When we talked about the mantle card, I showed that's a perfect example why I love the 67 set. And my favorite 50 set is the 57 set. Yeah. And it's the same general principle. Great photos. I mean, one of my favorite baseball cards of all time is the Felix Mantilla rookie in the 57 set. It's just a good-looking card. And my favorite card of all time, because I just am visually appealed to it, there was a scrub, and I mean the scrub reserve player. He had one moment of glory against the Phoenix Suns in the famed 3 triple overtime playoff game. His name is Glenn McDonald. And I mean, he has 1 or 2 cards, but his rookie year card with the background and his uniform and all that, just to me is my favorite card of all time. And yet you would never think that a baseball guy who hates the Celtics, because I'm a Knicks fan growing up, but my favorite card of all time is a Glenn McDonald basketball card. I mean, if I was writing a card about 300 great basketball, 300 great basketball cards, it would be in the book just so I could say, hey, this is my favorite card. 299 cards are great. This one's for me.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think of basketball cards, I really love the Sean Kemp with the skybox card where he's dunking. I think that's an incredible shot too.
Yeah, some of the early 90s cards are really underrated, but they're so plentiful.
Yeah, I know it's not worth anything. I just love the photo. And
it doesn't matter if they're worth something or not.
I know. So.
It really doesn't. It's do you enjoy the cards? I mean, I'm gonna get up for a second. I want to show you something.
All right.
I got to put these into a box with a top of them. I get great joy. This is a donation, and I won't take the cards out. And this box is going to go into a 3,200 count box with a top in it. But I get to play with cards that I get donations from, just to move them out of that into boxes we can use. It used to be for the show. I now just sell them for the Adat Haverim Brotherhood. You know, I do a lot of work for them, and it's fine. But look at this. I get to play with cards. I get to look at the cards. I've looked probably at millions of cards in the last 5 or 10 years. Wow. And it's just fun to look at these cards. And again, it's not that there's any value to them.
Yeah.
But if you enjoy it and have fun with it, they're good.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this.
You can see a stack of them. Yeah.
And as I said, the boxes without the tops are going to leave. And I'm going to put, I'm going to get new boxes, or I've got old boxes that friends of mine now give me. So at least when I sell them, and I ran, this is how fun baseball cards are. I put one ad on Craigslist when we were trying to clean out the office. 3,200 count box is $15. I mean, look, I was selling for my brotherhood. There's very little cost. And I was still getting requests a month later. Do you still have any of these boxes?
Yeah, people love them.
People love them. I mean, so there's a market out there. Ray's doing his higher level stuff, but there's a market for inexpensive stuff, and there's a market for these $1 million cards. And that's one of the beauties of the 60s. You can buy 69 commons in decent enough condition for a quarter if you really look hard enough.
Oh, yeah.
You could also spend thousands of dollars for PSA 10 Mickey Mantle cards.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fine. Look at the price thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, there's a lot of people who talk about price and investment, and I don't begrudge any of that.
Yeah.
Right. But you can buy the cards for, you know, you're not going to buy a ton of them, but you can buy 60s cards for a friggin' quarter.
Oh, yeah.
If you look hard enough.
And connecting to this topic, I wanted to ask you, just for the viewers, like, how would you recommend, say someone really wants to build one of these sets, like, how would you recommend that they do it? Just like go to a show?
First, I would tell them to go to COMC, since I
go to
work.
COMC. Okay.
But in all seriousness, figure out, like, you know, you gave a really good year-by-year background of the set. You showed the cards.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Topps book of the 80s shows those cards brilliantly.
Yeah.
Is it your birth year? I know, I mean, this is not 60s, but I know at least 2 people working on 72 Topps sets right now. Yeah, and they're struggling a bit with the high numbers. Why? They were born in 72.
Yep. Ray built the 72 set a couple years ago, didn't you?
Yeah.
That was tough. Yep.
Yeah. My birth year is 67, and so I got a
tough
good
luck with that, Ray, but that's a fun set to do. That can be a project.
Yeah.
Tough set.
And those high numbers, there are some short prints and there's some easy high numbers. That's not the easiest set to do.
Yeah.
But you're in Philly. I assume you still live in Philly, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You have some really good shows you can go to in the Philly area.
Oh, yeah. The Philly show, for one. And
you're blessed. You have the Philly show. Lots of vintage at the Philly show.
Yes.
And you can also start making friends or relationships with some of the vendors. Mm-hmm. And if they know you want to work on your 67 set, maybe you can't buy everything in one shot, but maybe you buy a high number here and a high number there. Mm-hmm. Maybe you buy a Seaver rookie first to get that out of the way, so then you can buy the commons.
Yeah.
Maybe you buy the Brooks Robinson. Maybe you buy, you know, the Carew rookie. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're just doing the Phillies, maybe you buy the Shaw Sutherland or the Jim Bunning card. You know, there's enough there to at least have fun chase the set. Oh, so I would just recommend do it however you want to do it. You know, that's one of the beauties with card collecting. You know, COMC, one of the beautiful things about COMC, skipping everything else, and I wrote about this long before I went to work at COMC, you can get an image for every front and back of the card of the 67 set, for example, on COMC. So you can learn all about the set and not spend a penny. I mean, you don't know what the distribution is, but you can learn what all these cards look like, and then you can remember, maybe I have them, maybe I don't, and not spend a cent.
Right.
And getting knowledge that doesn't cost you anything other than time. Mm-hmm. I wrote about how I once my wife had to do some test on New Year's Day, and I didn't want to go out. I spent the entire day looking at COMC, the 68 set card by card, just remembering what it was like doing 68s.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
All right. Well, Ray, do you want to kind of start wrapping this up? We've gone
we're almost
2 hours.
2 hours, and I hate to tell you, but I'm still as energetic as I was.
I know. You're ready to go for another hour or two. But
yeah, I meant to tell you, I can do an hour on almost any topic. The only comment is, you said this was episode 21. You probably should have had Dr. Jim on instead of me, because his favorite player is Roberto Clemente, and doing it for episode 21 might have made a little more sense.
Oh, all right.
Well, that's
well,
okay.
You got me there. I didn't think about that, but yeah,
I'm okay. I'm teasing you a little.
Yeah. All right.
I like teasing, but you notice I'm smiling as I say that, so you know I'm not being 100% serious.
Yeah.
Well, this was an honor. This was a privilege for us.
I had fun. Look at, as Mike said, I could look at him. I can go another hour.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we wrap up, remember to check out Rich on the Hobby Hotline show. Just go to youtube.com and look that up. He's on the Dr. Beckett's podcast a lot. I'd say at least a couple times a month. And he's, COMC, an employee there. So he encourages folks to go to comc.com, or I'm sure some of them are on eBay too, if you run across cards there. So any other promotions you want to do before we wrap up, Rich?
No, have fun with the hobby. I pointed out that hopefully I can start running my shows like I had been running for my synagogue. COVID, we got one in just the week before the COVID shutdown. And so hopefully maybe 6 months or a year, I can run another one again for the synagogue. Mm-hmm. That's long term. I have fun with that because that money goes back to the community.
Sure.
So, but I'm still, as you saw from those boxes, I'm still raising money for us just by selling cards.
Right.
And I still get the joy of looking at the cards. I just don't have to do the rest of the hassle of running a show. I love it, but hey, this is an easier life.
Right.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I had a lot of fun doing this, and I'm definitely going to watch this again and just soak in and take some notes. So, yeah. All right, Ray, you want to close this one down for us?
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for tuning in, everybody, to Sports Card Talk episode number 21. This is the second part of our series on the history of Topps, the evolution of the cards. We did the 1960s. I want to thank Mike, This Baseball Card Life, and our very, very special guest, Rich Klein, for the wealth of knowledge. Rich, thank you. Mike, thank you. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on part 3 when we're going to hit the 1970s. Thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you real soon.